Evolutionists say that creation shouldn't be taught in public schools.
Should creationists be lobbying to have creation taught in the science class?
Welcome to Creation Magazine Live. My name is Calvin Smith.
And I'm Richard Fangrad.
And this week we're talking about creation and public education.
And the school system.
Yes. Well, the first thing I think we should probably clear up is this question. Should Christians want biblical creationism taught in public school science classes? And the answer is
no.
No.
No, we don't want to do that.
I mean, that's going to be shock and awe for many people who know our ministry,
yes.
right?
Yes,
yeah. Why would we say that?
It's pretty obvious when you think about it. We wouldn't want, and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Here's the main reason: to get an atheistic or humanistic, or in any case somebody who doesn't believe the Bible, to try to teach biblical creation, it's just not going to work. Right. It's a nice idea to have a two-model approach, and we'll discuss that in more detail as we go on here, but it wouldn't work.
Right. I mean, we wouldn't want non-Christians teaching any other part of the Bible, so why the part that discusses about the creation? What we need to think about here is the difference between science, history, philosophy. I mean, these three are, inextricably linked together, and we need to understand that. And of course, CMI has long pointed out the difference between operational science and historical science, right?
Yes.
So operational science is what should be taught in science class because it's based on what we observe in the present. It's how we see things working today, understanding them better and things like that. But conclusions about how these things came to be the way they are, well, that's really of a philosophical nature. It has nothing to do with, repeatable, observable, operational science. Right?
Yeah, it's a historical view, isn't it?
Right.
The thing is, that would put evolution in that category as well.
Right.
In the same category as creation. And of course, evolutionists reject that.
Yeah.
But so what people are always discussing is what are the links to science? Why do we have this creation scientist and evolution scientist and so on? Why are scientists referred to in that way?
Right.
Sometimes it's because we have a natural tendency to want to know where things came from. And
right.
So we have, here's the observations, and how did they get there? We have these terms.
Right.
So.
Well, here's an example we could use. What you're seeing here is a schematic of the marine bacterium MO1. It's got 7 flagella, these motors tightly bundled in a sheath. And of course, there's a mystery when they first discovered these, how could they all rotate in the same direction without interfering with each other? Well, a French and Japanese research team solved it using electron cryptomography. And it's kind of a bit like a CAT scan, but with an electron microscope and I guess some very cold temperatures. And the researchers' diagram here shows the flagella as large gear wheels with the fibrils as smaller gear wheels. So you can see how it all works together. Now they say because of the size, a conservative estimate puts this bacteria's swimming speed at 200 body lengths per second. Now, if you could somehow blow that up into a scale that we could see, that would be like a large dog, let's say a meter long, moving at 200 meters per second. It would be going 450 miles per hour, 720 kilometers per hour. So they call this thing the Ferrari of bacterial motors. It's just...
and we've talked about ATP synthase and some other bacterial motors on the smallest scale.
Right.
And so here's this new discovery of this top end, the high level motor, and it's completely amazing.
Yeah. Now, interesting here, the Wan Fang here, or Ron, she describes it this way. She says, this design must be playing an essential role in the fast, smooth rotation of the flagellar apparatus that allows the rapid swimming of MO1. Look at how she explained that, the design, right?
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. And that's a completely amazing discovery, this little thing inside cells. And that could be taught to students just as you described it, just
Right.
explaining the different parts and how it works or how we think it works at this point based on the observations.
Right.
But then the natural question that comes right after that is, well, how did the thing get there? How did all of those interworking parts come together? And then we're moving out of science and into history. Well, what happened in the past to get this Ferrari of bacterial motors
Right.
that we see today?
Yeah, and if you allow for the idea of intelligent design in your thinking, then obviously it makes sense when you look at such exquisite, molecular architecture. Well, architecture needs an architect.
It does,
right?
yeah.
If she's describing the design of this thing like it's just so amazing, then obviously there must have been a designer.
Pretty good
and
conclusion.
So really that's where we get into when we get into this debate.
It's often claimed that evolution is simply change over time, and since change over time can be seen everywhere, then evolution is obviously true. But highly qualified creation scientists say there is much more to it than that. For evolution to have turned particles into people, simple change over time is not enough. A special kind of change is needed. That is, naturally occurring change that adds new genetic instructions. No one has seen this special kind of change happen. Darwin's finches, peppered moths and adapting bacteria are all examples of naturally occurring change, but not one of them shows the addition of new genetic instructions. Not one of them writes any brand new genetic code specifying how to make some new complex feature, such as feathers for lizards, for example. And since codes and programs cannot write themselves, there must have been a designer for all living things.
To find out more from Creation Ministries International, visit our website, creation.com.
So basically what we're saying is when we teach origins in school, both creation and evolution should not be taught in the science class.
Right.
They can both be taught in philosophy class because that's the category that both of them are in. They're beliefs about the past that are philosophical in nature.
Now, evolutionists like to say that no. Evolution is scientific, but
Of course.
Even evolutionist Michael Ruse. Now, he was a professor of philosophy and zoology at the University of Guelph here in Canada. And he was actually involved in some of the trials, when they were talking about getting creation in public schools and,
Yes.
and et cetera.
Yeah.
And of course, he and other anti-creationists loftily dismissed, the idea that evolution was some kind of religious, thing or something like that. But since that time, when he wasn't in court, he's actually gone on to say things like this. Evolution is promoted by its practitioners as more than mere science. Evolution is promulgated as an ideology, a secular religion, a full-fledged alternative to Christianity with meaning and morality. He said, I'm an ardent evolutionist and an ex-Christian, but I must admit that in this one complaint, and Mr. Gish is but one of many to make it, he's talking about Dr. Dwayne Gish, recently passed away, who was
Yes.
a creationist. The literalists are absolutely right. Evolution is a religion. This is true of evolution in the beginning, and it's true of evolution still today. So I think he's made the point very clear, even though
pretty clear.
he's said that, in court, no, it's not religious, but it is. Now, Jesus said, he who's not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. So, those seeking to secularize society, they'll often claim that their position is the most reasonable to teach in public schools because it's neutral. Right?
Right.
It's
Yes.
just neutral. That way everybody's represented equally. And of course there's some popular skeptics that would go along with that. One is Jonathan Miller. And he's actually said that, he actually rejects the label atheist because he just describes himself as a disbeliever, right? They're trying to remove himself
Yes,
from
yes.
atheism because
Yeah.
it has some bad connotations, et cetera. So he's a disbeliever.
As if they don't have beliefs, right? Like
Right.
the unbelievers, Dawkins and Krauss's movie there.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just semantic gymnastics that they're doing there. If you don't believe that there's a creator, you believe that there isn't a creator.
You believe in evolution.
You believe in
have to,
evolution. You
right?
have to believe in evolution. So it's as someone who doesn't believe in God, he must believe that nobody plus nothing invented the universe, created the universe.
Right, and there's no one to be morally accountable to.
Right.
as well.
There's nothing above humans, then you have a morality that comes out of that.
Yeah, so it's not neutral. I mean, Jesus is the creator of everything, right? We read this in Colossians 1, 15 and 16. It says, Christ is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him.
Yeah,
So,
and in the context there, it's referring to both things visible and invisible.
all things.
All things, the entire created universe.
Yep.
In a Christian worldview, the origin of it is it's upheld by the Creator.
That's right.
That's ultimately what upholds the universe.
So if you're going to say that you're going to teach kids neutrally, you're not going to refer to God, etc., you're actually teaching them naturalism. And that's
Yes.
far from neutral, because it affects every aspect of your belief system. You know, how much more when you're talking about neutrality, when you try to apply that to cosmology or biology or geology, let alone concepts like ethics or morality or anything in a without God context, so to speak.
Yeah, and many people fail to realize the implications of accepting such a view.
Right.
And we've on creation.com, there's many articles about that. So, such thinking poses a threat to the very foundations on which society is built.
Right.
Love your neighbors yourself, and so on. If we're just survival mechanisms programmed to preserve our genes or pass them on to the next generation, can you imagine a society that believes that that's the only goal of
Right.
like behavior based on that kind of a
Exactly. If people
origin.
are correct that there is no God and there's nothing other than matter and energy, then there's no such thing as good and evil. And you can just look at the history of mankind, and you're going to see that what Jeremiah 17:9 says is very true. The human heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. So actually, we need to address morality and ethics, and you can't do that in a no-God paradigm. And we'll be back.
Creation Magazine is a 56-page full-color family magazine that is an essential tool for anyone wanting to immunize their family against the anti-biblical worldviews bombarding us from all sides. With no paid advertising, every page is full of powerful articles, ammunition to intelligently discuss nature, history, science, the Bible, and related subjects. Although written for lay people, every effort is made to ensure the content is technically accurate so that even experts are satisfied, and young children look forward to the section written especially for them. Visit creation.com to get your subscription.
Now, if you've just tuned in, we're talking today about creation and public education.
Right. Another myth popularized by many secularists is that, evolution only, that kind of policy in public schools, that's the best way because it's fact-based.
Right.
It's
Yes.
just based on facts. Now, I know we've talked about this a lot of times on the show, but the fact is creationists and evolutionists have the exact same facts. We don't have different facts. And so it's really the interpretation of those facts that we're talking about here.
Exactly,
And that
yeah.
comes from a bias. I was in a conversation via email one time about a fellow trying to explain this to him, and he said, no, there's no difference between operational and historical science. And so I said, well, let's just see here. Let's give two examples from history. Here we've got Galileo, and he goes to the top of the Tower of Pisa, and he grabs two different sized balls, and he drops them. Well, what was he doing? He was doing repeatable, observable science. Now,
Right.
you and I
Yeah.
could go to the same place today, do the same experiment, get the same results as he got.
Yes.
It's based on repeatable, observable observation. And I said, well, there's also a man named Charles Lyell that in the past, he went to Niagara Falls and tried to determine how long it had taken for Niagara Falls to have eroded to the point it was. So how long ago did that, did it start? And of course, he was there for less than a year to make any observations. So he asked the locals that lived there that had observed it. He said, well, how long, how much erosion? And they said, well, 3 to 4 feet per year.
Yeah.
Well, he went back to England and he reported that 1 foot per year had eroded from the falls, contradicting what the eyewitness accounts had seen, and presumably he hadn't observed that because he hadn't been there for a year, and which gave it a date of over 10,000 years, which broke the biblical timescale, which is really what his result was. But it's turned out that we know now that Charles, his was completely wrong.
Yes.
So see, Galileo, he wasn't wrong. You can still make the observation today. Lyell was doing a different type of science. He was using historical science.
You can't observe the Niagara Gorge eroding today.
Right. So, atheists say, well, look, we've got these facts. You know?
That's right. Like this T-shirt here, we have the fossils, we win. It's as though this
we have the fossils too.
We have the fossils too. We all have the fossils. The fossils are all the same. What's different is the interpretation.
Right.
The interpretations differ because we have a different history.
Right.
We believe the evolutionists misinterpret those things. And a dead thing in a rock, a fossil, that's a fact. It's observed.
Right.
Everybody can observe fossils in rocks. And the question as to how it got there, that's an interpretation.
Right, how old it is and all sorts of that. I mean,
if you look at the example of, recently a woolly mammoth was found, and there was supposed to be 10,000 years old,
yeah.
and there was liquid blood still in this woolly mammoth. It's a recent discovery here.
Right, and now that's shocked a lot of people, and they said, "Wow, you know, how could that possibly last?" But okay, well, it was in a frozen environment. Maybe it could last. But a little harder one recently is they actually found a salamander, and they found intact muscle tissue in the specimen.
Okay.
And this is amazing, soft tissue, muscle, and blood. And here are some of the excerpts from the articles that were put forth. It said, we came across the muscle tissue during an analysis of several hundred fossil samples taken from an ancient bed in southern Spain. It was immediately identified by the sinewy texture visible under the microscope. We noticed that there had been very little degradation since it was originally fossilized about 18 million years ago, making it the highest quality soft tissue preservation ever documented. And then they said the muscle tissue is organically preserved in 3 dimensions with the circulatory vessels infilled with blood. Well, wait a sec. There's an observation that we're making that doesn't fit with millions of years. But anyway.
So we had the 10,000-year-old mammoth, then we had the 18-million-year-old salamander,
right.
And then, of course, there's Dr. Schweitzer's T-Rex blood cells, and hadrosaur, the T-Rex was a famous T-Rex, Dr. Schweitzer, and so on, 70 million years, and then an 80-million-year-old hadrosaur.
That's right.
And there's other dinosaur soft tissue that have been found since that time.
Right. So what we're pointing out here is that we all have the same facts, but some of those facts don't really seem to fit with evolution. And so why are they always talking about, well, you know, ours is facts-based and yours isn't? Well, we're all using the same facts to promote what we believe, of course. And then the words of leading philosopher and historian of science, Professor Marjorie Green, are very apt here. And she said this about Darwinism. She said that it's a religion of science that Darwinism chiefly held and holds men's mind. Darwinian theory has itself become an orthodoxy preached by its adherents with religious fervor and doubted, they feel, only by a few muddlers imperfect in scientific faith. And we'll be back.
When you consider the 206 bones in your body, a humble toe bone does not seem that significant. But in July 2001, Time magazine ran a cover story where a single toe bone was the star attraction. The article featured a recent fossil discovery from Ethiopia, which allegedly showed how mankind's ape-like ancestors first stood up on 2 legs. Readers were told, meet your newfound ancestor, a chimp-like forest creature that stood up and walked 5.8 million years ago. Remarkably, however, they based their claim that this creature walked upright and was supposedly our ancestor on the shape of a single toe bone. What's more, they found the toe bone over 16 kilometres from the rest of the fossil material used in the reconstruction. The article was titled, One Giant Step for Mankind, but maybe it should have been One Giant Leap in Speculation.
To find out more from Creation Ministries International, visit our website, creation.com.
Well, welcome back. Today we're talking about creation and public education, and we mentioned that public education is not a neutral ground right now, and we're actually going to take a look at some of the very real evidences of that. An article in the UK's Independent featured on July the 20th, 2012, titled "Teaching Creationism Indoctrination is a Form of Child Abuse."
Right.
Well, actually, the author in this piece said this: real education is about open-ended questioning and challenging the mind. Blinkered, limited propagandist religious thinking attempts to hold back or stop that process. Brainwashing is a form of child abuse. It should have no place in any place of learning. We'll talk about a bunch of hypocrisy here.
Yeah.
Because, basically they're saying, look, you're free to ask any questions you want. You can think for yourself. You can make up your own mind as long as you don't question our evolutionary propaganda that we're going to shove down your throat and not show you any other alternative to.
Yeah. So how can you have open-ended questioning, to borrow the phrase that we just read,
Right.
if you're not allowed to ask questions about God or intelligent design or creation, or maybe there's a designer, things like that's not open-ended questioning.
Exactly, and that's exactly what this country has mandated in its government-funded schools.
In the UK,
yeah. In its funding agreement, a new clause 24A states the following: the school shall not make provision in the context of any subject for the teaching as an evidence-based view or theory of any view or theory that is contrary to established scientific and or historical evidence and explanations.
Okay, now did you get what this is saying
Did
here?
you see how open-minded that was?
What it's saying is that the evolutionists are demanding that only one story of origins can be taught and that no evidence can be brought against it.
Right.
How is that education?
Yeah, there could be heaps of evidence against it, but you're just not allowed to bring it against it. Now, this has been happening for a long time. CMI's shown the link between, atheistic materialism and humanism and the theory of evolution for a while. And humanists and atheists have seen public education as a great way to promote their religious views.
Absolutely.
For a very long time. And I'll give you a quote here from way back in 1930. Charles Potter, in his book, Humanism, A New Religion, said this: education is thus a most powerful ally of humanism, and every American school is a school of humanism. What can a theistic Sunday school meeting for an hour once a week and teaching only a fraction of the children do to stem the tide of the 5-day program of humanistic teaching?
And atheists like John Dunphy have made a very bold stand, even bolder than that. For example, look at this quote from the official journal of the American Humanist Association. I am convinced that the battle for humankind's future must be waged and won in the public school classroom by teachers who correctly view their role as the proselytizers of a new faith. The classroom must and will become an arena of conflict between the old and the new. The rotting corpse of Christianity, together with all its adjacent evils and misery, and the new faith of humanism.
Right, so here we are, a clear example.
Amazing.
We just put teachers in schools, if they're atheists and humanists,
Yep.
and now we get them as preachers of a new faith, right? It was interesting, in the last U.S. election, I came across an article in a Seattle newspaper from an English teacher, a college advisor at Northeastern University in Evanston, Illinois, Bill Savage. And he revealed some interesting things. He said, here in the United States, they've got Democrats and Republicans, kind of like liberals and conservatives, let's say. And he said it was no good. He himself didn't have any kids. And he said this is no good because the Republicans, the conservatives, outbreed us. They have more kids than we do. And they're going to teach them their conservative values. And then, of course, we won't have Democratic presidents.
Oh, no.
But he had a solution, and this is what he revealed. He said the children of red states will seek a higher education, and that education will very often happen in blue states. For the foreseeable future, loyal ditto heads will continue to drop their children off at the dorms, and after a teary-eyed hug, mom and dad will drive their SUV off towards the nearest gas station, leaving their beloved progeny behind. Then what he proudly claims? And then they're all mine. And he's got over 1,000 hours a year to massage their little brains and put in what he thinks. So please, parents of Christians out there, this is not a neutral battleground you're sending your kids to.
Creation.com is the world's most powerful internet resource for finding answers to questions about the origins debate. It includes an online store where you can browse through hundreds of the world's leading creationist books, DVDs, and related materials. Scientists and researchers from around the world have contributed more than 8,000 articles, many of which have appeared in leading creationist publications over more than 30 years. Creation or evolution? When the results are in, which one is supported by scientific observations? Find out at Creation.com.
Well, today we're talking about things that are going on in the news.
What's happening in the news?
Well, the Huffington Post, Fox News, etc. There were many different news agencies that covered an article. It said, humans in 100,000 years, what will we look like?
I can't help smiling. I know it's coming already.
I know. And anyway, they started off with a picture of what we supposedly looked like now. Here's a good representative of the human race.
Okay, awesome.
Right here.
That's great.
I'll just read some of the different things that they commented on. They went through basically a timeline of how we're going to evolve into the future.
Okay.
And it said, modern day humans may someday evolve to have larger eyes, more pigmented skin, and thicker eyelids, thanks to genetic engineering technology, and here's how they'll change. Wait a sec. First of all, we're going to get darker skin? What about all the people on the planet that already have darker skin? Like way darker than me or you, for example.
Yeah, the pictures here are white people that they put up.
Yeah, why the Caucasians? Well, I mean, if you remember the old Ape to Man series, you always remember that we start off as dark-skinned, hairy apes and turn into Caucasians. Which is inherently a racist concept.
It is. Yep.
And now here we're talking about future evolution where we're going to evolve dark skin. Well, folks, we already have dark skin. Oh, by the way, interesting that this article came out when just a little while ago I saw this article as well. And it said, evolution stops here. Future man will look the same, says scientist. And here was an article from a different scientist who had a completely different take on this. He said, no, we're going to look exactly the same where we are in a million years, and totally contradicting this article.
Yeah,
but
okay. Well,
anyway,
a little hard to have a crystal ball and do these things.
It shows you how loosey-goosey this concept is. But anyway, so 20,000 years, here's what we're supposed to look like now.
Okay.
And it said in 20,000 years, in a world where genetic engineering is commonplace and humans have established colonies in space, human knowledge of the universe will increase. And as such, the size of the brain will increase. Dr. Alan Kwan theorizes. As a result, the human head will have to become larger to accommodate the larger brain size.
Wow. So if we read more books, will our heads get bigger?
Well, apparently, because as we get more
idea?
knowledge of the universe, then we're going to get
But wait a minute,
bigger brains.
Neanderthals from a group that we suppose, or that some people supposedly evolved from, they had bigger brains than we did.
Right.
So again, this is kind of going back to like the whole pigmentation in the skin.
Yeah, very
type of thing.
flip-floppy, isn't it? Okay, well, what are we going to look like in 60,000 years? Here we are.
Oh boy.
This is supposedly real science, folks. In 60,000 years, Dr. Alan Kwan states that after millennia of traveling through space, zygotic genome engineering will be used to create humans with larger eyes, more pigmented skin, and thicker eyelids. And this will be done in order to see better in the dimmer environment of space, to shield humans from UV rays and alleviate the effects of low to no gravity like today's astronauts.
Well, wait a minute. So here he's talking about, that's genetic engineering. He's talking about manipulating our genes to produce these things.
So intelligently designed evolution, which is not evolution at all.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you ready? Here we are, folks. Here we are in 100,000 years. We all look like little anime Zwinky figures. 100,000 years from now, we believe that humans will have much larger eyes and eye shine due to the tapetum lucidum, a layer of tissue behind the retina of the eye.
Wow.
So we're going to look like cats. You know, when you see them in the dark, their eyes shine and,
right.
and things like that.
There are articles written by evolutionists that are very intelligent, very well done, and then there's other articles that just don't work.
They're plain silly is what they are. This is a great example of evolutionary storytelling, not science, folks. We'll see you next time.